Thanks for joining me today. My name is Mindy, and that's short for Amanda. And thanks so much to Eva and Ellie at Fresh Voices for inviting me to create this workshop. And thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited. In all of my years of facilitation, I've never pre-recorded a workshop like this that won't have any immediate interaction. So it's something new for me and maybe for you too. And while there might not be any way for us to interact with each other as I'm recording this, I'd be really grateful to hear any questions that you might have or any thoughts that you might have about the workshop by contacting me on Twitter. So here I am today. I'm in Glasgow, and just now it's July 2020 as I'm recording this, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So I don't know where you are and where I am. Things are still all a little bit strange and different than they are usually. So this isn't normally where I work from. Around you can see I have some plants, I have my nice table, I have my teapot, my flowers behind me, lots of books, and some books on the table as well, and some items of stationery. So yeah, really excited to be here today, and I'll spend a little bit of time telling you what to expect before we get started. So what to expect, I'll be sharing some zines, some prompts to plan and reflect on using creative and participatory research methods. Also some links to resources, and I'll be making a zine which you're welcome to join in with at home if you'd like to, or wherever you are today. And what not to expect. So I won't be covering the history of zines or the history of zine making. I'll point you to some resources about those things in the resources section. I won't be focusing on teaching facilitation skills, although I might make some comments about how you might facilitate certain things in the workshop. I won't be showing how to run a zine making workshop either, but again, I'll signpost to some resources and fantastic things that are out there that you might want to draw on. So what will you need to get involved in this workshop today? You'll need some paper, you'll need something to write with, or however you would record your thoughts. I always feel it's very important for me to have some water handy and some tea. Also, a little bit about me. I am a PhD student currently at the University of Glasgow in the sociology subject area, and I'm also a research assistant. For anyone who might be visually impaired who's joining the workshop, I'm white, I'm in my mid-30s, I have long brown hair, and today I have on a kind of tealy blue sleeveless top with a high rolled neck. I have some red lipstick on, I have kind of shiny brown nail varnish, and some big hooped earrings that are like tortoiseshell, so like black and brown kind of pattern. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me. And what I'm going to do now is pop up a wee slides and summarise my introduction and give you a couple of minutes to get organised. I think I might go and make another wee cup of tea. See you back here in a couple of minutes.
What to expect. Find out a wee bit about zines. Some prompts to plan and reflect on creative participatory research. Links to resources. What not to expect. History of zines or zine making. See Duncombe, Piepmeyer, Worley, Robinson, Chidgey or Triggs. In-depth exploration of theory. Teaching facilitation skills. How to run a zine making workshop. See Cooper. What do you need? Some paper, a way to record your thoughts, a pen and paper, or keep some voice notes. Let me know what you think at Amanda Says on Twitter.
Hi again, hope you're all organised and ready to go. So the first thing that I thought I would do to get us started in the workshop is, what is a zine? What even is that? So let's have a little look. This is my fabulous suitcase filled with all my zines and zine making stuff that I take to workshops. So I've got a wee selection of zines in here, and we'll have a look. I'll also show you what else I bring along to a workshop so that you can see what kind of things are involved. For a long time I was carrying around tote bags and carrier bags and stuff in them, and then eventually realised that I needed to move to a wee suitcase, and it's so much better. So here's include a wee selection of some of the zines that I've got in this clear blue wallet. I've also got some other things in this suitcase that we'll start to look at through the workshop. So I've got another pink see-through wallet, and that's full of different kinds of paper. I would always bring something like that with me to a workshop. I also have some pens, coloured pens, felt pens, different thicknesses, sizes and shapes. I also bring, and these are some Centos, which are scented coloured pens, which are really fun to use and can also be great for engaging with your sight loss. I also have some glue sticks, many glue sticks, scissors, gemstones, more pens of all different kinds in here. Things like these wee letter stencils can be quite fun to use when you're making a zine, but you don't need any of this stuff. It's just nice if you want to get some different materials on the go. There's a big bag of washi tape here, which I really love. Washi tape, if you haven't used it before, comes in all sorts of different kinds of patterns. And one of the things that's really fab about it is that you don't really need scissors to cut it. It tears really easily, and you can stick it onto the thing that you want to decorate. I've also got a big, huge bag here of old magazines, tissue paper, envelopes, and things that I've come across that might be useful to use in the zine making workshop in my very bougie bag. Yeah, so this is what I would normally have with me when I was going to get some zine making on the go. I'm just going to put this to one side. Now, have a wee look at some zines and see what they're all about. So I've collected zines for a long time, since I was a teenager. I've also been making them for about as long, and have particular areas of zines that I collect, but also because I'm doing workshops, I'll sometimes collect some that are not always within my area of interest, but might be something that I think might be interesting to show to other people, and always there's something wonderful to enjoy about every zine that I have. So what I'm going to do just now is have a wee look at some zines and point out that although there are no rules about zines, and that's an important part of the politics of zine making, there are some conventions and things that you might see come up time and time again, certain techniques, certain things people include in their zines. And as I say, these are not rules, but they're some features that you might like to incorporate if you're making zines yourself, or also point out if you're interested in sharing zines as a museum. So lots of different ones here, and this can also give you some ideas if you're going to make zines about how you might wish to approach it. So very commonly in workshops, because they're fun to make, they're small, people might make a one-page zine. I do this quite a lot when I'm doing workshops too, although I'm not going to do it today. But you'll find a link in the resources to show you how to do that. So lots of these here, these small one-page zines. This one is from Pen Fight Distro, which is a fabulous place where you can source some zines if you're interested in buying some for yourself. This one's about some tips on how to make zines, and in a wee second I'll come up closer so that you can see in more detail how these zines look and how they're made and how they're printed and the different techniques that go into them. So some zines, this one, There's No Such Thing as a Little Bit OCD, has just been made using one sheet of A4 paper and a pen, and that's it. And the person's filled it with their ideas and criticisms about some of the things that we know about OCD. So usually zines have a cover page which tells you what it is. It has a title on the front, and quite often on the back it will have the zine star or zine maker's contact details, so that might be something that you want to think about. And sometimes in zines, not in this one, but sometimes you'll come across if it's about a topic that might be challenging or difficult to engage with for all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes the zine, this one has one, might have a content note inside the front page. So this one says content note: gaslighting, ableism, dehumanisation, victim blaming and violence. So these are some of the topics explored in the zine. And there's all sorts of different formats of zines, and definitely the best way to find out what zines are about is to engage with them directly yourself if you can. So I've put a couple of links in the resources to links to online zines and some zines that have been scanned in online. But the best way, of course, is to engage with them yourself in person. So also in the resources, there's some links to where you can find things locally to you. That might be through a zine library, it might be through another library or museum that has a collection of zines, and it might be a place that sells zines. So I've put that out there for you. Yeah, so lots of different things here. Some of my favourite formats for zines, this one's called 100 Happy Things. And it's a list of 100 things that make a person happy. These are really fun kinds of things to make, and you can do them on all kinds of different topics. I actually made one for about 50 things I've learned when I was 50% through 50% of the way through PhD. Yeah, loads of different things here that you might want to engage in. And this is one of my favourite zines. It's by a person called Sabine Rear, who is a blind illustratrix, and she makes zines about her experiences of ableism as a blind person, since I have one. As you'll appreciate if you know anything about my research, I'm particularly interested in disability and young disabled women. So I have lots of zines in that area, but they can be about anything, really whatever interests the maker. So I have some here about football, for example, Quizogeny zine, which is a feminist pub quiz zine that you can use. This one is Animal Crossing, little lino prints of different objects that you may come across in Animal Crossing. This is Poor Last Zine, which is about working class identities. It's one of my favourite zines. What else do we have? Let's have a wee look. Some zines that I've been involved in making. This one's also related to the kind of thing that we'll be doing in the workshop today. So this is one I made before called Prompts for Feminist Reflexivity. And the workshop we'll be doing today will also involve some prompts. And there's some fab academic zines out there, not really all that many, but the ones that are out there are fantastic. So Kirsty Fife writes these zines, and they're doing a great job of demystifying some of the experiences of their adventures in academia. So they've got these great zines. I'll pop a link if anybody's interested in looking at those. This is a really brilliant zine and really important zine from Barnard's Zine Library called Cite This Zine. So normally in a workshop we might discuss some ground rules, and this isn't like an ordinary workshop, so that isn't something we'll be doing. But I guess if there was one rule, is if you're going to use zines in your research, make sure you cite them, and Cite This Zine is a great way of learning how to do that. And also it'd be great if you are interested in drawing on anything you've learned in this workshop, if you could cite the workshop too. Here's a Dungeons and Dragons zine, all sorts of different things. And as you can see, lots of different shapes and sizes. Some zines, as I mentioned, will be using a pen and a piece of paper. Some might be more desktop published. Here's Drawn Poorly, another big favourite of mine. And that's a collection from different contributors that they have put together in this zine. Some people might use collaging, which is appropriating either existing text or images and popping them into a zine of your own creation, or it might even be your own stuff that you cut out and paste and put in here. And this one has a beautifully watercolour coloured in cover, and so each individual zine is different, that is distributed. So there's loads and loads of different ways to make zines, and they're quite hard to define. I've popped a link in the resources to a fab zine by Cherry Styles, which is about what is a zine, if that's something that you'd like to explore more. So yeah, a wee introduction to zines, and if you want, I'll pause the video and leave some time through the links that you can have a wee look at some other examples of zines that might be in your area of interest, or might use a technique that you'd be interested in trying for yourself. So check that out.
What is a zine? See styles. Often handmade, often photocopied, usually cheaply produced, often self-published, usually not for profit, small circulation, often shares ideas and identities not in mainstream media or publishing.
Hello, and thanks for coming back again. So we've had an introduction to what you can expect from the workshop overall, then a little whistle-stop tour on zines and what they look like and what they are. And now I want to spend a minute explaining why I use zines in my research and how I use those in my research. So why zine making? So my research focuses on issues of identity, issues of meaning and narratives in the world. And I was really excited about using zine making as a method in my research because it's a visual method and really influenced by the work of Ptolomey, Helen and others in visual research and visual sociology. Also, they're a creative medium for expressing identity and influenced by the work of Helen and creative methods. And zines as a medium are a place for expressing identities and ideas that are not always included in the mainstream. So that's another reason that I was really interested in using them in my research. And zines also privilege the narratives and agency of the person making them. There aren't any rules that you have to follow. You can choose and you're in control and you have the power to decide what you put in your zine and who you share your zine with, and that's something that's also very important. I am by no means the first person to use zine making as a research method. There's some other examples of research out there. The way that I use zines in my research, that there's no set topic, and the people that can engage with me in zine making can make a zine about anything that they're interested in, anything they want, or not make a zine if you don't want to make one, and want to hang out in the space and engage in the zine making environment. And I also don't do any secondary analysis on the zines that people make. So I'm interested in what the zine means to them and what the making of the zine meant, what it felt like, and people's own narratives about their own lives. So, for example, I don't look at a zine that somebody's made and come up with ideas about why they might have used a particular colour or why they might have written particular words. I'm interested in people's own points of view and what their meanings are from their own perspective. So that's a little bit about how I use zine making. And now we're going to move on to the next part of the workshop, which is going to be looking at creative and feminist participatory methods and thinking through some prompts for planning and also reflecting. And we're going to be doing that through the medium of the zine. So looking forward to seeing you for this next part.
Why I use zines in research: a process and medium for agency and creative expression, a way to express identities and ideas which are often marginalised. Zines are, according to Radway, social, visual and creative, influenced by Mani, Lomax, Cara. Zines is a feminist and inclusive medium. Influences include Harris, Piepmeier, Schilt, and also see Randerson-Bolt. How I use zine making in research: usually workshop based, no set topic, concerned with participants' own narratives and meanings, and interested in the processes and meanings of zine making.
Hello, really excited to get started on this main part of the workshop. And what we're going to do is explore some prompts to plan and also reflect on feminist and participatory creative research methods. And that's going to be done through the form of creating a theme. So, feminist ethics of care, a very brief explanation of what that is. It was originated by Joan Tronto, and this copy of her book Moral Boundaries, which I'm holding up just now, was given to me by my colleague at the University of Glasgow, Aisha Muteba, who's a fantastic scholar incorporating feminist ethics of care into her research. So I'll read this little bit from Joan Tronto's book. Joan Tronto says, to recognise the value of care calls into question the structure of values in our society. Care is not a parochial concern of women, a type of secondary moral question, or the work of the least well-off in society. Care is a central concern of human life. It is time that we began to change our political and social institutions to reflect this truth. So I'm concerned with engaging questions of care more in the research process itself and how we can do research in a way that values care and human interdependence. So Joan Tronto has suggested, and these have been added to a little bit over the years, that there's some interrelated elements that are really important to feminist ethics of care, and that's what I'm going to use to think through designing and reflecting on our creative methods. So feminist ethics of care, these main elements are suggested originally by Joan Tronto as being attentiveness, responsiveness, responsibility, competence, and later on trust was added do some prompting and reflecting on how to approach participatory and creative feminist research. So I'm going to make these zine to do that. The kind of zine that I'm going to make is using just 2 A4 pieces of paper and folding those in half across the landscape way. So the widest part of the paper and then folding it in half. And that's it. And I don't know, I might staple it or I might use a needle and thread to stitch it together. I haven't really decided yet. So I've done a wee bit of planning already about this theme beforehand, which is always a bit of fun if that's something that you're interested in doing, to think through your ideas. And I think the zine is going to be called Feminist Ethics of Care and Creative Participatory Research, and that's what I've written on the cover of my book. I've also popped my name on the front there, and on the back I've started to collect a list of resources or references, and I'll add to those as I go through making the zine, check them all at the end. Probably on the inside cover, I reckon I'll do about this zine, maybe a wee bit about my research, a wee bit about me, and include that there. So if you want to join in and think this through from the point of view of your own research, please do. You could either think about your responses and just jot them down on a piece of paper, make some voice notes for yourself, or if you want to actually join in and making your own zine, that would be fab, and I'd love to see it if that is something that you decide to do. So the first point I'm going to address in this zine, just taking those elements of feminist ethics of care in order, is attentiveness. And as I do reflect as part of my research on feminist ethics of care and the research that I've conducted, but also going to do some more reflection about it today for our workshop. So one of the most important elements, I think, in feminist and creative participatory research regards to attentiveness is accessibility, and making sure that your research is inclusive and accessible for everybody that wants to get involved. And of course that starts before your workshop or before your interview, about being attentive, asking questions, and being open and flexible to changing the way that you're doing things, to notice the needs of the people that you'll be engaging in your research. So accessibility is one of the prompts that I've popped in here. I've also written down here about opting out. Now, agency, as I mentioned, is something that's really important to me in theory, but it's also something that's really important to me in my research practice. Think about how easy or difficult it might be for somebody to opt out or decide they don't want to participate in the research. I think it's a really great thing to make it really normal and really actually validate it if somebody decides that they no longer want to participate in your research. That's a choice that everyone should be able to make, and it's good to be attentive to how easy you make that for people. So I've popped opting out as a new prompt in here. I've also popped exclusion down around about attentiveness. Attentiveness isn't just about paying attention to the needs of the individual person that's engaging in your research. It might also be about things like the wider cultural context that your research is happening in. If people have maybe been really marginalised from participating before, how can you make sure that you're attentive to that and make your research as inclusive as possible? So there's lots of different things we can have here in attentiveness. Maybe you want to have a think about the people that you engage in your research or your practice. How could you be attentive? What kind of questions could you ask yourself to make sure that you have done that as part of your process? And now, give a wee minute to think about that. How do you notice the needs of the people that you want to engage with in your research or your practice?
Attentiveness. How do I notice participants' needs? What can I do to include everyone? What cultural context is my research taking place within? How have my participants been excluded or marginalised in the past?
Moving on to the next page on my zine that I'm thinking through some prompts around is about responsibility, which is the next interrelated element of a feminist ethics of care. So in terms of my research and the research process in a university, one of the ways that responsibility can be manifested is through the process of ethics and making sure that your research is approved, of course, for you to conduct it, but also about how you navigate that ethics process and what kinds of information do you make available for people that you might want to engage. Um, and within the research process itself, for example, in workshops, responsibility isn't something that's just about me, it's something that can be co-created with everybody engaging in the space. And that might be through things like ground rules that we create together, where we share responsibility for the space. It might be things like everybody helping to tidy up at the end of the workshop and being responsible for one another's safety, or pointing out if there's a cup of tea that's been spilled so somebody doesn't slip on it. Thinking about how you can cultivate that co-creation of responsibility in your own research. If you were going to have some ground rules, if you were doing a workshop, what might those be? How might you chat to the people that are engaging in your research about what they think is important? And take a couple of minutes to think about that.
Responsibility. What does responsibility look like in my research or practice? What rules or boundaries do I need to co-create with participants? Am I aware of ethics specific to my methods, for example, visual research? See resource list.
The next element I have in my theme, the next page that I have here, is on competence. Competence is a really important element, I think, in participatory research in particular. And I've got some prompts here about ways we can think about ensuring that we're competent to carry out our research, and also ways that we can develop competences that we don't have. So I've got reading, that could be books, it could be zines, it could be blogs about the methods that you want to use, about the viewpoints of the participants that you'd like to engage with, asking colleagues or peers. Something I think in competence that's kind of challenging, particularly if you're doing doctoral research, is making sure that you have adequate resources to engage in a caring way with the people that you want to work with in your research. So those could be making sure you've got the right materials, making sure you've got a budget to make things accessible if that's what's required in your research, and also time, the time that it takes to learn, to engage with, and to build relationships when you're doing participatory research can sometimes be a little bit in tension with how quickly things need to happen in universities. So that's something important to consider. An area of competence that I think is really important, as suggested by Ptolomey, is trying out the research method on yourself first before you try it out on somebody else. So if you're interested in using zine making in your research, go along to a zine making workshop, get involved, see what that feels like from the point of view of a participant. And I wrote a blog about that for a PhD one in Scotland before. It could be trying out your interviews from the point of view of a participant and going through them with someone else. Also thinking about what training needs that you might have, and the kinds of training needs that you might have for, depends where you study, for doing facilitation and participatory research might not always be available within the traditional methods training in a university. You might have to look outside to the third sector or charities and the kind of training and facilitation support they might have. So I've been a facilitator for about 15 years. I've done some formal and lots of informal and non-formal training on facilitation. It's something that I have spent a lot of my time developing. And also, as well as trying the methods out in yourself, maybe it's worth actually engaging along the lines of the types of methods that you want to use. So that could be by volunteering And of course, a lot of organisations wouldn't appreciate you just going along for a couple of weeks. You might need to make a longer term commitment to that, or be upfront and say that you can't commit to a long time, but maybe you can do some shadowing in an organisation that, for example, if you want to work with young people, engage with young people. So those are some things to think about in relation to competence and some prompts here. So maybe spend a couple of minutes thinking about your competence in relation to the research or practice that you do. And what are your strengths? What are the things that you're great at? What experience are you already bringing with you before you started to engage in this particular endeavour that you're undertaking now? And what other needs might you have that you want to take with you going forward? And how might you have a wee look at addressing those?
Competence. What skills do I already have? Have I tried the method on myself, as suggested by Manu? What have I been learning? Reading? Blogs? Twitter? Zines? Do I have adequate time and resources to carry out this research? What skills do I still need to learn?
The next prompt that I have in Lysium is around about responsiveness, another element of the feminist ethics of care. And responsiveness is a fascinating topic to me as somebody really excited and interested in facilitation. One of the main ways that I use responsiveness is through reflective practice. I keep a journal, and I also really incorporate feedback as part of the research process and ask lots of questions about how people are finding things as they go along. One of the things that Joan Tronto said is that, and I quote, inequality gives rise to unequal relationships. And that can include things like historic oppressions. It can also be power dynamics that are because you may have a different role or responsibility than the people that you're engaging with in your research. So these are all things that's really important to be responsive to. So for a couple of minutes, maybe have a think about, do you use reflective practice just now? And is that something that you might be interested in doing in the future? And do you have any processes to ask for feedback when you're engaging in your practice or your research? And how might you do that?
Responsiveness. How can I ask my participants for ongoing feedback? How do I engage in reflective practice? What are the power dynamics between me, my participants, others involved in the research process?
And then the next and final prompt in this theme is about trust. A really, really important element of feminist ethics and care that's been added to those main elements later. So developing trust in your practice or your research. Some of the ways that I like to think about that are through using reflexivity and thinking about how and why I'm engaging in the research that I'm interested in and being transparent about that and telling people about it. Also, I think time and being able to dedicate adequate time to building relationships with the organisations and the people that you're engaging with in your research is really, really important to being able to establish some trust. And also things like being reliable, being able to follow through on your plans for your research. And these are all really important aspects too. So maybe spend a couple of minutes thinking about trust and how is it that you have built that in the past in your practice or your research, and also what other things can you do regarding that going forward?
Trust. How can I build trust with my participants? Am I being clear about what will happen? Can I follow through on all my plans?
Okay, and now onto the back page of this zine of prompts. No more prompts on the back page, but things that I'll include on the back page are the resources that I've drawn on and things that have been really important to me in developing this idea of feminist ethics and care in creative research processes. And I'll put the citation for this zine that I've made at the bottom of it in case anybody wants to cite it in their work. So yeah, this is the prototype of the zine. Probably what I'll do following this, so that people are able to actually access this zine, is take these ideas and then spend a wee bit of time developing what they're going to look like in this blank paper that I have here, and then distribute it and share it with anybody that's interested in it.
Resources. What are the key resources which have influenced my research methodology?
So, thanks so much for joining the workshop today. A wee bit of reflection on what we've covered. And the fab thing about this being recorded is you can rewind, you can pause, you can stop, you can engage with it after in any way that you like. So we started off with some of the aims of the workshop, what to expect and what not to expect, a wee mini introduction into zines and what those are, a little bit about how and why I use zine making in my own research, and then talk through some of these ideas around the feminist ethics of care and how you can plan and reflect on your research using the feminist ethics of care as part of your process and methodology. And there's a whole ton of resources that you can follow up on if you're interested in finding out more about zines, the history of zines, zine making and research, a feminist ethics of care. If you're interested in finding out more about feminist methods, then those are all in the resources section. And also, I'd love to hear from you any questions, any feedback or comments that you have about this workshop. I'd really like to know more. So thanks again, and look forward to hearing from you if you'd like to engage with me on Twitter. And I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing today, it's a really good one from here on in. Thanks.
Thank you. Check out the resources and please tweet me at Amanda Says with your questions, comments and feedback.